Oh, man. This week has been crazy. But as usual, we made it to the place that's like a safe haven. Behind the mic, chopping it up with you guys. And we got a lot to talk about. Hey, we're getting down the stretch of home stretch of the NFL season. And it's bittersweet every time we get to this point of the season. No more bye weeks left. So it's official. We're down home stretch once we start talking about no more bye weeks. And the contenders have separated themselves from the pretenders. You've got all the teams in the hunt, so to speak. And then you've got the teams playing out the string. And I'm almost ready for those teams to just fade to black and just allow the playoff teams to get it going. But there's this hurry up and wait type of mentality when it comes to the playoffs. But then when you get there and you realize, yo, we're about to not have football for 6 months. I mean, if you count that USFL, XFL stuff, knock yourself out. When a lot of you enjoy it, and that's great. To each its own. For me, it's the NFL. Like, remember the Nerf commercials? It's Nerf or nothing. That's what it is for me. It's the NFL or it's nothing. I barely even watch college football. I'm not even going to hold you. Like, I get excited when football comes back, and college is usually first. So I'm all into college. And after like the first 3 weeks, I'm like done with college football. I just kind of peek my head in every now and again. I'm not going to lie. Dion had me captivated early in the season like everybody else. So, I was making, Colorado must-see TV, but that quickly faded as we thought it would. And, I really had no interest in college. There was no dominant team this year in college football. Even Georgia, who was undefeated all season again until they got to the SEC championship game, even they had flaws and they looked flawed. They looked like a team that was vulnerable. They would fall behind almost every week and then come back and win decisively. But still, you could see like the teams the past 2 years that won the national championship, they were dominating teams. There was no Georgia's down 13 in the first quarter, and then you look up and Georgia wins by 27. No, they were on somebody's neck 27-0 before you even got to halftime, and you knew the game was over. So I knew they weren't serious. Alabama, I don't take them serious. Texas, they are what they are. I don't see them doing anything. Michigan is probably the best team in college football, but they're flawed as well. Their offense is solid. It's not a juggernaut. Like, you catch them on the right day, you can beat Michigan, but their defense is so good. I think they're the national champions, to be honest with you. They're not happy they have to play Alabama. They thought they were getting Florida State. That's why you saw the reaction when they unveiled the playoff teams, and Michigan was kind of subdued because they thought they were getting Florida State without a quarterback. They were looking to feast. That would have been a true number one seed, right? You were literally getting a 4 seed that was going to be vulnerable, that was going to be offered up as a sacrificial lamb. And they thought that's what they were getting. And then they look up and they're getting a tested SEC Bama team that's been to these types of environments many a times. Hell, they just had to knock off a team that hadn't lost in almost 3 years in Georgia in the SEC championship game. And so these boys, even though I don't think their quarterback is good enough to lead them to a national championship, it's still Bama. It's still Nick Saban. You still got to deal with that aura, and they just don't want to smoke. So I'm nervous about Michigan with all the shit that they've dealt with Jim Harbaugh, who hasn't coached in almost a month now, and them getting into the playoffs. We've seen them fail in these situations. Last year, TCU got them right out of the gate. And so I'm not sure if I can trust Michigan to finish the job, but we'll see. Anyway, I said I don't watch college football, and there you go. Typical Louie T shit, right? Anyway, I've talked your head off long enough. We haven't even gotten to the intro. What am I doing? You're locked into the LouieTeeNetwork podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads. Classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 379th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, yesterday was rough. This whole week has been rough for the kid, as I mentioned at the top of the show. But yesterday in particular, I was struggling. So, I don't know how old some of you are. And I know it's a lot of young ones out there too. And bless your heart. What I wouldn't give to be 22 again, 23, 25. But I'm not upset about where I am in my life. I'm excited about the adventures that lie ahead. And one thing I've learned about getting older, gaining wisdom, one of the things that I've learned is that you got to listen to your body. Your body speaks to you in a number of different ways. And, you know, a lot of people kind of ignore the warning signs or try to treat the symptoms, but you got to get to the root cause of the problem, right? Your eye is red. Could be from a number of different reasons, but if you know your body and you know what your body's saying to you, don't put clear eyes in your eye and keep going. Go to sleep. Your eye is red because you're tired, right? Don't treat the symptoms, treat the problem. And a lot of people, oh, I got a headache. So they take aspirin to make the headache go away. But why do you have a headache? That's not normal. Your head doesn't pound just randomly. Something's wrong, right? Anyway, I digress. That's another story for another day. I could go on all day about that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, yesterday, your boy was tired. Like, I've been running ragged all week long, and it caught up with me yesterday. And I wanted to push through, and I told myself, I'm going to push through this, and then I can sleep tomorrow. And I got to last night, and my body's like, nah, bro, that's not what's on the menu. Sleep's on the menu. I'm like, but I can't just get these 2 videos in? Did you hear what I said? Sleep is on the menu. Fair enough. So I took my black ass to sleep. Boy, did I need it. And sometimes you just got to listen to your body. So here I am. I'm refreshed. I feel good. Got a lot of shows on deck today. This is the first of at least 3. And I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you guys today. And when I'm refreshed, I get into some of everything. And that leads me straight into the Gem Droppin Session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. And before I get to today's Gem Droppin Session, I need to say this. Did you see Draymond Green haul off and smack Usage Nurkic? Like, this dude's a clown. Golden State is getting exactly what they deserve. They already knew what they were signing up for when he hauled off and cold-cocked his teammate. And his antics have been this way for about a decade now. And this is who he is. He's unapologetic. He's not going to change. And I think it's ultimately going to be Golden State's demise. It's the reason Kevin Durant's not there anymore. They could have kept winning. He's a liability at this point, with Draymond Green. But it's crazy. They need him. But he's self-destructive. But I don't know. Nonetheless, I don't even know why I brought that up. You rarely see somebody just turn around and haul off and just hit somebody for no reason other than playing basketball. Like, I don't even know what the hell is wrong with this dude. Anyway, I digress. I was perusing social media, and I told you when I'm refreshed and rejuvenated, I got extra time to waste. And I hate using it on social media, but such is life. It happens sometimes. You get caught in the rabbit hole, and then next thing you know, that rabbit hole becomes a black hole, and you get sucked in. I try my best to not allow it to happen for too long. And usually I'm pretty good at chopping it off before it gets to an hour plus. But I was perusing social media and I ran into one Cameron Newton. And, you know, he's very opinionated these days. Most of them, to me, don't hold any weight. But, it is what it is. He's carved out a niche for himself. And good for him. I love it, right? I always like to see guys succeed. So recently, he had a take, which is very common amongst people in this particular space. People love to have takes. They like for them to be the hottest of hot takes because it garners attention, which is what happened with Cameron Newton, and which is why I'm talking about him right now. He's done his job, right? It's what Skip Bayless does. It's what Stephen A. Smith does. It's what the best of the best do, is they say something spicy and allow everybody else to run with it and give it the attention that it needs, and they've done their job. They plant the seeds and they let everybody else nourish it so that it grows, right? So Cameron Newton lately jumped on the Brock Purdy is a game manager train, and then he threw in a name that I just didn't see coming, which was Dak Prescott. All right, now Dakota being a game manager, maybe earlier in the season, but that's never who he's really been. He's never really been a game manager, right? I've always felt like Dakota could make plays. See, okay, so let's back up a bit. Cameron Newton, first of all, can he start getting people's names right? It's Brock Purdy, not Brock Pretty or Purdy. It's Brock Purdy. Nobody calls you Cameron Newton, right? Like, get people's names right. At least let's do that, right? Anyway, Cam Newton said that Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, it was one more person I'm missing. Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, somebody else, Brock Purdy, and then he threw in Dak Prescott. Were all game managers. And I agree with the first three people he said. Tua is a game manager. He's in the perfect system for his skill set and talents. You put Tua in a different offense where it's not the ball coming out of his hands quickly, and he's a different quarterback. And I'll even take it a step further. For me, game managers are guys who can't create off schedule. They're the guys that you say, hey, this is what we need from you. Don't lose us the game. We'll keep everything tight and on schedule. If things break down, just don't do anything stupid, right? Don't fumble when you get hit. Don't throw a pick because you're scared. Like Derek Carr is a game manager because when shit breaks down, Derek Carr turns into a nervous wreck. He doesn't want to get hit. He's playing hot potato with the football. And so Derek Carr is what you call a bitch-ass dude, okay? I've never seen a guy more skittish in the pocket when pressure starts to come his way, right? Derek Carr's like, I don't want this shit. Get rid of it. He just like, I've seen no-look passes from guys like Eli Manning, and then there's Derek Carr, who's just like, I don't give a shit what happens to the football. Just get it out of my hands, right? But guys like Derek Carr, Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, those are game managers, yes, because they can't create off schedule. And for me, that's what a game manager is. A guy that you ask to not lose you the football game, and a guy that can't create off schedule consistently, okay? Guy that you can't put the game on his shoulders and say, hey, go will your team to a victory. Game managers are guys that play well within the game. And to me, an elite quarterback has to be a game manager as well, right? Like, it's funny because we've turned game manager into this negative connotation, but honestly, that's a part of what makes an elite quarterback is you have to be able to manage the game wherever it is. Josh Allen, to me, sometimes he fails at the managing the game portion of being elite, right? Because week one against the Jets, once Aaron Rodgers went out, he needed to turn on his game manager brain and say, hey, I don't need to do much now. I'm not out-dueling Aaron Rodgers anymore. He came into the game with a mindset of, We got to score 30. We're playing Aaron Rodgers. This isn't the old Jets with Zach Wilson. I got to go out here, and we got to be able to score 30 plus to win. And then when Rodgers went down, he never shut that off. He never said, oh, shit, it's Zach Wilson. They're struggling. Let me just not turn it over, and we get out of here with a dub. He kept acting as if he had to go out and sling it, and he kept turning it over. And to me, that's the part of not being a game manager that gets some quarterbacks in trouble. You need to be a game manager in order to be successful. But that's a piece of the puzzle when you're an elite quarterback, when you're a difference maker, when you're a needle mover. That's a part of it, but you're a dynamic playmaker. When shit breaks down, you make things happen, whether it's with your legs, with your arm, or both. You make it happen. When the team needs you the most, you go out and you make something happen, even if it's not there, right? And that's what you see from the best of the best in the NFL. Mahomes, Jackson, Hurts a lot of times has done that as well. Herbert has done that for the Chargers. Burrow is one of the best in the league. Allen, as I mentioned. Like, when we're talking about the best of the best in the NFL, we're talking about guys that make it happen despite the circumstances, okay? A little banged up, some kind of injury, don't care. We saw Mahomes do it in the playoffs last year, in the Super Bowl last year. I'm banged up. I can barely run. I don't care. I'm going to will my team to this victory, right? Joe Burrow, we've seen him play banged up and play injured and still get it done, right? That's what the best of the best do. I couldn't disagree with these Brock Purdy takes and this Dak Prescott take any more than I do with Cam Newton right now. It's just ridiculous. First of all, I think those two guys, Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy, are your two front runners for the MVP. I don't even think anybody else is in the race. We can mention other guys. It'd be cool to mention Tyreek Hill's name, his quest for 2K. It's cool to mention Christian McCaffrey and his contribution to the 49ers. Can't go understated, right? Obviously, he's been huge to their success. But when it's all said and done, the NFL is a quarterback-driven league. And if your quarterback is really good and he's playing at a high level and your team has the best record in the league, you're going to be in the conversation for MVP. And that's where Dakota Rain and Brock Purdy find themselves right now. Both of their teams are 10-3. Both of their teams are at the top of the NFC right now, fighting for the number one seed. Both have their teams tied at the top of the NFL for the best record in the league. They both are playing extraordinary football. And so this notion that Brock Purdy is some sort of game manager, like he's system built. Look, he plays in a fantastic system. You know what's so funny to me? These people that want to get on these quarterbacks for playing in great systems. What do you want them to play in, a garbage system? Like, that's a part of the equation. I've always said that where you're drafted makes a difference. It matters. Because if Tom Brady isn't drafted by the New England Patriots and he ends up going to the Cleveland Browns, he's not Tom Brady. I don't give a shit what you're saying, and I don't care how good he ultimately turned out to be. He's not Tom Brady if he ends up in a Cleveland Browns uniform in 2000, okay? He went to New England. It was the perfect spot for him, the perfect system, the perfect fit. And then he became Tom Brady, the GOAT, over time. And the systems that he played in, whether it was Charlie Weiss early on, and then it morphed into Bill O'Brien, and then it turned into Josh McDaniel, it was the perfect system for his skill set. What are we talking about? You don't think Mike Holmgren helped Brett Favre in his career in that system, that West Coast system? Like, we know Brett Favre was a gunslinger, this, that, and the third. You don't think that helped him? Playing in a really good system helps. You want to know why Dak Prescott's playing his best football of his career? Because he's in a system that suits his skill set with Mike McCarthy. It took a while. It didn't look pretty early on. But once he got a hold of it, and they got that thing, and they started hitting the ground running, and they got into stride with it, they've been a machine in Dallas. I think they get their first real test probably since the first Philadelphia game. They get their first real test probably since the first Philadelphia game coming up on Sunday against Buffalo. We'll see if it looks the same on grass, outside, in the cold as it does inside, at home, on turf, where you're mauling cats these days. And oh, by the way, this is your first good opponent on the road pretty much all season long since, again, Philadelphia and San Francisco, and you lost both of those games. All three of your losses this season have come on the road. Obviously, you've won all your home games, but you're not the same team on the road. The last time you played a road game, it was Carolina, and they stink. But for the most part, you've struggled on the road. So let's see if you can go out to Buffalo and get it done. That's going to be a big test. But when we talk about game managers, Brock Purdy isn't a game manager. Again, he does manage the game, which every NFL quarterback has to do in some way, shape, or form. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You have to manage the game. You have to know that it's 3rd and 3 and you need a completion for 4 yards or more. And to not chuck it 45 yards down the field. Like, if you get the look and your guy's open and you get one-on-one and you trust your guy and you can make the throw, right? But understand that there's a penalty to 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 1, and you decide to chuck it 35 yards down the field incomplete. Now you got to punt or you got to go for it on 4th down and 1. Like, if there's a 3-yard completion in front of you on 3rd and 1, take the 3-yard completion. That's part of being a game manager. Everybody wants the home run and the big shot, but that's a low percentage throw 35, 40 yards down the field when you got a 1-yard, 2-yard, 3-yard throw in front of you that gets you the first down. Take the throw, move the sticks. That's called managing the game. That's smart football. There's nothing wrong with that. But game managers don't do much more than that, right? Dak Prescott is creating off script. Dak Prescott is making plays inside and outside the pocket. Dak Prescott is making plays with his legs. And Dak Prescott is putting his team on his back like he did a couple Thursdays ago against the Seattle Seahawks when the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. Again, I don't know how he gets lumped into that conversation. Brock Purdy is playing out of his gourd right now. And to think that he's being judged and criticized, and this guy's just in his 2nd NFL season. He wasn't even supposed to be here. He was an afterthought. He was Mr. Irrelevant in the draft 2 years ago in 2022. Everybody passed on him. Honestly, if he wins a Super Bowl this year, his story is even more improbable than Tom Brady. Tom Brady wasn't a 7th-round pick. He wasn't Mr. Irrelevant. Tom Brady wasn't asked to do the things Brock Purdy's being asked to do this early in his career. Tom Brady made some timely throws, but he was being carried by a run game and a defense that was elite when he first came into the league. He morphed into Tom Brady over time. Brock Purdy is having to carry the 49ers offense along with Christian McCaffrey. He's having to make throws. Some of them short ones and his guys do the rest. That's a part of the equation, guys. Show me a quarterback who hasn't had guys make plays for him, and I'll show you a quarterback who isn't starting in the league or who isn't very successful. You can't have to do it on your own all the time. But when throws are required of Brock Purdy down the field, he doesn't miss. He's highly accurate, and he gives his guys a chance to run after the catch. When plays have to be made off schedule, it was funny. I was on with the Super Friends last month, and Lloyd Brunson said Brock Purdy can't run. And I'm like, what the hell have you been watching? Clearly not the 49ers. He's an athlete. Brock Purdy can't run, he can't move? What are you talking about? Clearly you haven't been watching the same Brock Purdy that I have. Because Brock Purdy's an athlete. He can create with his legs. He can create off schedule. He can make things happen. And the best red zone offenses are the teams that can, one, run the ball in the red zone, but two, have a quarterback that can extend, make tight window throws and extend and make things happen off schedule and off script. That's how you score in the red zone. It's tough down there. It's condensed, not as much space. You got to be super accurate. You got to be a guy that throws with timing and rhythm. And you also have to be able to escape the pocket and extend. And whether that means running and getting in with your legs or throwing a guy open towards the back pylon or on the sidelines, right as he's going out of bounds and throw a tight window needle throw and allow a guy to drag his feet or back of the end zone before he's going out of bounds. You got to be able to do that. Purdy can do that. And we've seen the 49ers play well with guys like Jimmy Garoppolo. We've never seen them be dominant before. There's a reason. Jimmy Garoppolo was mid. So no matter how they had a dominant defense in 2019. They were the best team in the NFC in 2019. But you weren't afraid of them because of Jimmy Garoppolo. You were afraid of them because of their defense. Right? Garoppolo literally was the definition of a game manager in the sense that, hey, just don't F this up, dude. Like, seriously. Just don't throw a pick or don't get hit and fumble. Just do the little things correctly, and we'll take it from there, right? Defense is legit. We got a dominant run game. Just don't F it up, please. That's not what the 49ers are on. That's not the type of time they're on anymore. Now it's, hey, you can get this 40-point outburst. You can get a 50 burger put on your skull. Like, they're capable because Brock Purdy is capable. It's not just Christian McCaffrey. It's Brandon Ayuk. It's Deebo Samuel. Hell, it's even Jennings, right? It's George Kittle. Like, they got weapons, but who's getting those weapons to football? Who's creating the time and the space to get those guys to football? Who's getting them the football accurately down the field, whether he has to leave the pocket, climb the pocket, scramble, whatever? Who's the guy that's getting all these guys involved? It's Brock Purdy. Does he play in a quarterback-friendly system? Absolutely. That's not his fault. He's making plays, though. And as far as I'm concerned, the way he's playing, the way that Dak Prescott's playing, the numbers that they're posting, and look, Purdy's body of work, I think, is more impressive than Dak's right now. Dak has won a lot of games against lesser opponents, and I'm not knocking him for that. He's done what he's supposed to do. Other than the Arizona Cardinals game, he's been pretty much lights out against lesser opponents. But now the stretch of the schedule that I think ultimately is going to determine the MVP race is right now, because Dallas is playing the murderer's row portion of their schedule. And if they somehow navigate this, they come out, and they may lose a game, 3-1 out of this stretch, and Dak, doesn't turn it over, or he only turns it over once because he had the fumble, scoop, and score. Obviously, that doesn't show up on your statistics, but we all watched the game and we know he did fumble that football and they got scooped up and run for a touchdown, or else the Eagles don't score a single touchdown on Sunday night's game. So with that said, you got to keep all of that stuff in mind. But if they are able to somehow navigate this portion of their schedule, continue to put up the big offensive numbers that they're putting up, it's going to be hard to deny Dak Prescott the MVP trophy, especially if Dallas wins the NFC East and somehow gets to the number 1 seed, which I can't see happening, with San Francisco owning the tiebreak over them and Philadelphia. And I just don't see the 49ers, barring some kind of catastrophe. If they're healthy, I don't see anybody else beating the 49ers in the regular season. That said, as stranger things have happened, and we'll see what happens with all of these teams, but particularly Purdy and Prescott, because I think it's a two-man race. What Tyreek Hill is doing is amazing. I don't think there's a single defensive player that's in the conversation. Myles Garrett was earlier in the season. He got nicked up, and he's kind of fallen off statistical wise. So I don't think, or statistically, he's fallen off. I don't think he is in the mix anymore. And from a running back perspective, Christian McCaffrey has been fantastic. He had the streak where he scored all those touchdowns in games consecutively. He's been the catalyst, I think, for the offense in terms of the consistency of it. But if you're talking about the dynamic nature of their offense, it starts and ends with Brock Purdy, right? McCaffrey is the consistency that stirs that drink, right? He's the guy that they hand it off to set the tone, to get them into manageable situations, to take some of that pressure off of your quarterback, which is what you need in today's NFL. So many people want to glorify the quarterback position and minimize the running back position, but especially when it starts to get colder outside, you need these guys. You need these running backs. You need to be able to turn it around and hand it off. And McCaffrey has allowed Purdy to do that. Remember, Purdy's still a second-year quarterback. That's the thing that is so amazing, is that so many people look at Purdy as if he's a 6-7 year vet, and he's a second-year pro. Like, he's still very, very young. And I don't think people really understand that or even acknowledge that. What he's doing at such a young age in the NFL, and I get it, he spent a lot of time in college, and I think there's value to that. I think evaluators are starting to really assess quarterbacks differently now because of some of the success we've seen from guys that have played a lot more football in college. There is value in having played 3 or 4 years, thank you, in college football. And y'all give me 1 second. Whew. All right. Whew. I told you I've been struggling this week. Part of that is my kids trying to get me with a cold. I won't let them, though. I won't let them. But they trying to take me out. But I'll just say, I'll just leave it at this. Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, 2-man race. Tyreek Hill is doing fantastic things. His quest for 2,000 yards is tremendous. I think he's going to fall short, but we'll see what happens. But what he's done has been fantastic, right? Christian McCaffrey, the numbers he's posted, the amount of touchdowns he's scored, what he's been for the 49ers, again, extraordinary. But this is a quarterback-driven league, and the two quarterbacks on two of the best teams who are playing the best football in the league are Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott. And those teams wouldn't be 10-3 without those two quarterbacks playing at the level that they're playing at. And thus, those are the two front runners for me. And I don't think anybody else is going to be even remotely close when it's all said and done. Again, there's still 4 games left in the season, and anything can happen. And, Dak Prescott could implode in the final, 3-4 games of the season with the schedule being what it is. And we could be having a quite different conversation 2-3 weeks from now. Brock Purdy, same thing could happen to him. You just don't know. But at the end of the day, the body of work that they've both put forth to this point, large sample size now with 13 games behind us, we kind of know what we're getting ourselves into. The numbers speak for themselves. And to me, Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. And it's a 2-man race for the league MVP. And I'm excited to see what happens down the stretch and into the postseason with those two respective teams. And particularly Brock Purdy. Again, there's a conversation to be had about his ascension to stardom. And if they win a Super Bowl this year, he would have done it in his second year. He would have gone to 2 consecutive. This would be on some Patrick Mahomes shit without the 1 season of sitting and learning and waiting, right? Essentially what he would have done in a slightly over a year and a half's time as a starter in this league is he's gone to 2 NFC championship games, won a Super Bowl, gone to a Super Bowl, won it, probably win league MVP in that same regard, and done it all as the, seventh round pick as Mr. Irrelevant, which again, this already has Brady undertones to it, but you're taking it to another level if we're talking about him doing all of these things in such a short amount of time. So Purdy is a fascinating story, and I'm very interested to see how this thing ends up for him this year. If he can stay healthy, if they can stay healthy, they got a legitimate shot in San Francisco. So Dak Prescott, this is the best ball I've seen him play in his career, and it's not close. Like, I've been blown away because people wrote him off. My dad is a Cowboys fan. Y'all know about Boss Man. I tell y'all about him all the time. He wrote Dak off after the 49ers ass whooping. He said, and I quote, "We'll never win anything with Dak as our quarterback." That's what he said. And I had to call him out on that after he made the comment that they're not losing another game in the regular season this year. And, you know, he had his excuses, and I told you what he said. But at the end of the day, the turnaround that Dak has made in just this season alone, because earlier in the season, the offense was checkdowns, all checkdowns. Everything was short. Everything was quick. Nothing was explosive down the field. CeeDee Lamb wasn't getting involved. They were rudimentary on offense, and the defense was really carrying them. Special teams was really carrying them. It wasn't the offense. He looked like a game manager early in the season. Literally, that's the definition of a game manager. Since he's turned back into the Dak that we saw earlier in his career, the one that scrambled around, that made things happen in and out of the pocket. When his legs are necessary, he's able to use them. And so he's looking more like the Dakota that we saw early in his career, less like the Dakota or the Daiquiri after the ankle injury, you know, where he didn't really want to run. And he's making every throw. His confidence is through the roof right now. And I've never seen him play with this much confidence. And we've seen good Dak before. We've seen Dak play at a high level, never this high before. And that's why I think a lot of people feel like the Cowboys have a legitimate shot to do some real damage this year if they can, you know, somehow manage to get the #1 seed. If they can get home field advantage, they've shown that their home field is a legit advantage for them. And if they can somehow manage to get to that #1 seed, look out, right? But we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. It's a two-man race. I don't know if you agree with me or not. I definitely don't agree with Cam Newton that Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy are game managers. I think that's bullshit. But you call them whatever you want. You're going to be calling one of the two guys at the end of this season league MVP. I know that much. Let's transition to our next segment and Slate Skatin. What we'll do is we'll take garbage time and we'll turn that into me answering all of your comments at the end of the show. But I want to go through the slate from week 14 real quick. What a week it was. Upset City. I think we had a week earlier in the season where we saw the most underdogs win. I think that was toppled by week 14 for someone that is in a football pool league. I study this stuff on a weekly basis very closely. Week 14 was as nasty a bloodbath as I've seen in a long time from a wins-loss perspective. If you had anything less than 7 losses, you did a hell of a job. In a week where there were 15 games, the standard loss ratio was 8 wins to 7 losses, right? If you had 6 losses, you did a hell of a job. If you had 5 losses, that's almost a legendary sheet. If you had 4 losses or less, I would put that in the category for the greatest sheet that I've ever seen in my life. That's how bad it was in week 14. So I'll go through it real quick. Buccaneers, Falcons, and I'm going to make these short and sweet. I'm not going to, give you the long, drawn-out breakdowns like I normally do. This game, my sister is a Falcons fan, so we were watching this game, and the biggest issue with the Falcons. So here's how I see it. The Falcons the Saints are the best team in the NFC South. They should win the division, but they're not going to because I told you I can't put my finger on it. Derek Carr is a clown. We already knew that from his Vegas days, but it's even worse now. I can't quite put my finger on what's wrong with the offense other than the injuries. They've had a ton of them, but that shouldn't be the reason why they're struggling the way they are. They're just not good on offense, not as good as they're supposed to be. They've had a ton of injuries, but they were struggling before the injuries too. They should win the division, but they won't because they don't know how to win. The Falcons are the next team up because they, to me, are the most exciting. If the Saints are the most talented, the Falcons are the most exciting. They've got the most dynamic pieces, in the division as a whole, between Drake London, who's emerging as a star, and I was wrong about him. And I'm ready to offer up a double O. I want to see how the rest of this season goes. He made one of the most incredible catches of the season that you will see in that game on Sunday versus the Buccaneers. It was just an outstanding catch by a guy with his size and body control. And these are all the things we heard about coming out of USC. Incredible body control, huge catch radius. You saw it all on that one play. Outstanding hands. He's turning out to be a really big-time playmaker for them. You still got Kyle Pitts, who's still, working his way back from the injury and getting back into the offense. And then you got Bijan Robinson. They've got one guy at each level of the offense that's just as dynamic as it gets in the NFL. And they got a really good offensive line. It's a really stout group when they're all healthy, which they weren't. 4 of the 5 offensive linemen were out of the lineup on Sunday. But when they're all healthy, that's one of the better offensive line groups you'll get. Their quarterback situation just stinks. Desmond Ridder is a turnover machine. And they're not going to win anything with this guy because he always is turning damn football over. And for all the good he does with his legs and things of that nature, there's misses on open receivers, and there are, bad decisions, and they're poor overthrows, and we just go, what are you doing, dude? Just like, he's the quintessential. I told you who he is, right? He's Ryan Tannehill. He's Alex. You're a game manager, bro. Just don't lose us the game, right? Use your legs, manage the game. You need 5, get 6. Just don't do anything stupid. If he could just do that, they'll win the division. But I don't trust him to even do that. And that's why they lost this game. That and Younghoe Koo, who has been one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL, not just this season, but over the last 3 to 5 years. He had an out-of-body experience and missed a couple of kicks. And that proved to be costly in a game that they lose by 4. But too many mistakes by the Falcons. And they allowed a Buccaneers team who's good, not great, pretty, solid in terms of the way that they're coached. I actually like what their staff is doing with the parts that they have. They just hang around. And Mayfield, as he's done for a lot of the season, made some timely throws. He did it against the Houston Texans, even though the defense ended up giving it right back and losing that game. He's done it this season where he's made some timely throws and given them a shot to win. He did it again here. They ultimately win the football game 29-25. You know what's going to ultimately happen, I think, is the Falcons should win this division. They got the Panthers coming up. They're going to beat them. I think if they can steer clear of the turnovers, they'll win the division. But if they don't, I think it's going to be the Bucs that's going to win this division because they know who they are. They play clean ball, and they don't turn it over. They take care of the football, and when they turn it over, they can't win. They're not good enough to overcome mistakes, but they know who they are. They play within themselves, and if they can just get more out of their defense, because the offense is solid. They know who they are offensively. It is what it is, right? They're not going to score a bunch of points. The defense is going to have to carry them. And then in the weeks where the offense is alive, where they are scoring points, if the defense creates turnovers and short fields for the offense, the defense is going to have to make certain points stand up. Like if the offense is they're humming that day and they score 27, you can't say, hey, sorry, we're giving up 28 today. Y'all got to go score 30. No, you got to make that 27 stick. If they can do that, the Bucs will win that division. But it'll come down. And I'll say this right now. Whoever wins this division is going to win it with a winning record. I know what it looks like right now. It's not good. All 3 teams tied for first are at 6-7, under 500. Whoever wins this division is going to win it at 9-8. So there you have it. I think it's going to ultimately be the let me see the Falcons schedule real quick. Falcons got a shot. And let me see the Bucs schedule. It's going to be the Falcons. Bucs have a tough schedule. I think it's going to be the Falcons. Colts and Bengals. This one went exactly the way that I thought it would. The Colts have been the AFC South has been a great story this year. with the Texans being what they've been this season, the Colts doing what they've done, the Jags are who we thought they were coming into the season, and the Titans are who I thought they were. I don't know how you guys felt about the Titans, but the Colts aren't good enough to go on the road and beat Cincinnati. I didn't think so. And after seeing what Jake Browning did on the road at Jacksonville on Monday Night Football a week ago, I just felt like that gave the whole team confidence that, hey, we can win with this kid. Now let's go out and play ball and give him all the help that he needs. And that's exactly what he did. They jumped on these boys early, allowed them to come back. This was 14-0. Then the Colts came back, made it 14-14, and then they said, all right, enough of this shit. And they scored 20 unanswered points and won this thing going away. But at the end of the day, this is a really, really good Bengals team, which is why I told you, had Joe Burrow stayed healthy, I had them as the best in the AFC. Even though their record wouldn't have said that, that's just how I felt about them. Because I think this is a really good team defensively. I think they got the weapons. They're getting healthier on the offensive side of the football. And all they needed was just Joe Burrow to put that cherry on top. And now they got Jake Browning, and I think he's good enough to get them to the playoffs. Now, winning once they get there, different story. But the Colts, they were a nice story this year. I think Shane Steichen should get a couple of votes for head coach of the year. What he's done in Indy this year, with the situation being what it was, having a young quarterback, starting him getting hurt, having to play Gardner Minshew and still winning, speaks volumes as to the job Shane Steichen has done this season. And they're going to finish with a winning record, I think, or at least 8-9, somewhere in that neighborhood, probably 9-8. I think they're going to miss the playoffs, but nobody expected Indy to be here. But they just, to me, there's only so far you can go with Gardner Minshew, right? And I think you're starting to see that. And again, they're going to win a couple more games, more likely than not. But when it's all said and done, they can't be in the playoffs. The Colts can't be in the playoffs. And Cincinnati showed them that there's a big gap between Cincinnati and Indy, and that's the difference between a playoff team and a non-playoff team. And that's what we saw in this game, 34-14. Cincinnati gets it done. Now, Browning did get hurt in this game. I think he's okay. They can't afford to lose him, right? And I don't think it's anything significant, but just something to keep an eye on. They need him to be healthy. 34-14, Bengals get the win, get to 7-6, which is where Indy is right now at 7-6 as well. Indy was, I think, pushed out of the playoffs with that loss. I think. Let me see. Let me check and see. Yeah, Indy is the 7th seed currently at 7-6. So, but like I said, Cincinnati's coming, Buffalo is coming. Those are the two teams that I think are ultimately going to punch their tickets to the playoffs. I see the Steelers falling back, and so do I see the Colts falling back as well. But with the injury to C.J. Stroud, I don't know how significant his concussion is. I think that's going to hinder the success of the Houston Texans as well. Anyway, I digress. Cleveland hosting the Jaguars. Remember, we talked all week about Trevor Lawrence's status, and this dude must be made of rubber or something. Like, he has to be as elastic as it gets at the quarterback position. I've seen this guy bent like a pretzel in so many different directions and come back and play the next week. It's amazing. There was no way, after we saw this guy fold up like a lawn chair on Monday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals, where they brought out the cart. He refused the cart, used the help of a couple of staff members to limp off the field, where he could barely put any pressure on his leg. There's no way that we thought he was going to be able to play the next week. We were talking could be season ending, definitely missing the next 2 games. And there were big ones against the Browns and then the Ravens, a couple of big-time AFC North opponents. Sucks because the Jags have built themselves into a team that could potentially get the number 1 seed, and now this happens. And then he ends up playing, right, which is insane. He played. I didn't say he played well. I just say he played, and he gave them the best chance to win, right? But he threw 3 touchdown passes, but he also threw 3 picks. And these were back-breaking, soul-crushing picks. And they couldn't run the football, so everything was on him in this game. And it didn't go well for him. And anytime you got a guy who is right up to the game time decision, like literally working him out pre-game to see if he can go, and then you trot him out there and have to throw it 50 times, that's a losing recipe. And still, with all that said, they pushed the Browns to the limit, 31-27. This was a fun game to watch too. Flacco, man, I just marvel at the fact that Joe Flacco was sitting out there. I still can't get my brain around the fact that Flacco was sitting out there this entire time, and all these teams that are struggling right now currently at the quarterback position, the Jets primarily, and he was a Jet before, so I don't know if that played a part into it or not, and they didn't want to go down that road again, but it just boggles the mind that all these teams thought it better to go in different directions than Joe Flacco. Here are the Browns struggling without Deshaun Watson, have their backup quarterback, their rookie, get hurt. PJ Walker stinks, and they go out and get Joe Flacco, and literally they went from, okay, they're not making the playoffs now, to, oh shit, the Browns are going to the playoffs now. Flacco has come in. He stabilized this offense. I told you he played really well. Even though they lost that game against the Rams last week, I said he played really well in that game. And Flacco, 26 of 45, 311, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. And he had a great connection in this game, particularly with the tight end, David Njoku, who was just making some big plays. 2 big touchdown catches, 6 catches, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns in this game for David Njoku. And this team normally is really good at running the football, not in this particular game against Jacksonville's defense. And so a lot of it, as you can see, 45 pass attempts for Flacco, that's not ideal. A lot of it was put on his shoulders, and he was able to deliver. And Jacksonville just wouldn't go away. The Browns in this game really controlled this thing from start to finish. But there were little periods where Jacksonville would sneak back into the game. They would never quite go away. Even at the end, they get the touchdown to Evan Ingram. They kicked the onside kick, and obviously they didn't recover, and that was it. But they wouldn't go away. They just kept hanging around in the game. But Cleveland prevails. They're 8-5. So is Jacksonville, right? And so now the Browns look like a legitimate playoff team now with Flacco in tow. It's similar to what I felt about Cincinnati. With Jake Browning, they look like a legitimate playoff team now. With Joe Flacco, the Browns now once again look like a playoff team again. So, and I'd even go a step further and tell you, with Joe Flacco, the passing game is probably even better than it was with Deshaun Watson. Now, you lose the mobility of the quarterback. The quarterback is a runner. The threat of the quarterback running opens up holes in the run game. So all of that stuff kind of goes by the wayside now. But if you're talking about, pure passing, a guy that in the big moments, and this is the difference between Watson and Flacco. Flacco's won a Super Bowl. Flacco's played playoff football. He's one of the best road playoff quarterbacks in NFL history. You can take Flacco anywhere and he can get it done. I say a lot about Joe Flacco. You give him time and he's got weapons, he can do some damage. Don't sleep on the Cleveland Browns, and that defense is good now. They've incurred some injuries, and they've got more injuries, and they're all of a sudden a banged-up unit. They're not the same as they were, say, a month ago. But if they get those guys back, if Flacco continues to play well, look out for the Browns. They're 8-5, and they're holding on to the 5th seed in the playoffs currently in the AFC. The Jags are going to win the AFC North division. I know things have tightened up considerably. They're only 1 game ahead. I know it sounds crazy, right? At 8-5, they're only 1 game ahead of both the Colts and the Texans. They're going to win that division, are the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to lose again on Sunday to the Baltimore Ravens. And then after that, they're going to win the rest of their games, and they're going to win that division. But shit's gotten tight in the AFC North, or South, rather, excuse me, all of a sudden. Jets and Texans. Speaking of things getting tight in the AFC South, the Jets have an offensive explosion, right? They go off for 30 points, and they destroy the Houston Texans. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Not the fact that the Jets won, because it was a nasty day on the East Coast like it was the week prior. If you played a game on the East Coast, it was going to be wet, it was going to be windy, and that's going to change everything, right? When the conditions are what they were on Sunday on the East Coast, it alters everything. That said, that kind of weather is made for Jets football, which is why I thought they would beat Atlanta. And if Zach Wilson had played, they would have beaten the Falcons. But they decided to go with those quarterbacks, Simeon and Boyle, and because of that, you get a loss, right? Well, there was a lot of scuttlebutt over the past week about Zach Wilson. Did he tell head coach Robert Saleh, "Nah, I'm good. Let whoever have it," right? Like old Vince Young, let Curry have it. Did he tell him, "Nah, I'm good," right? Like y'all made y'all decision on me. I'm good. Y'all go ahead and finish up the season without me. Or and it happened. He probably did say something to that effect, like he was feeling some type of way. It got out. It shouldn't have. That's family business. It should not have gotten out. Aaron Rodgers scolded the Jets for that. And so there was a lot of conversation. We even talked about it on the podcast last week. And then, of course, like always, like the NFL script has it written out, he comes back and he has his best day of the season. They win 30-6 in blowout fashion, and all's right in the world of the New York Jets, right? Of course. In that game, what's the bigger story is CJ Stroud gets injured, has a concussion. And now, if that lingers for a week or two, the Texans, who are smack dab in the middle of a playoff race, in hell, a divisional race. Forget about the wild card. They're one game out of the top dog spot in the AFC South division. This could have far-reaching consequences. So, you got to see what happens with CJ Stroud moving forward. But this was a total dominant effort by the New York Jets. I mean, the offense had it going, and the defense was just getting after. And it was crazy because there were times in this game where the Texans had, field position, and they just couldn't do anything against that Jets defense. They were swarming. They were getting after CJ Stroud. It got ugly, specifically in the second half. This was a 0-0 game at halftime. But it was funny because me, my wife, my dad, and my sister were watching the game, and we were laughing because it was 0-0 at halftime. Little did we know we would get a 0-0 game all the way until the 2-minute warning. Hell, seconds left in the game with the Vikings and Raiders later on that day. We didn't know that was coming. This was the precursor to that. So we were laughing about this game being 0-0 at half. Then the Jets went apeshit in the second half and scored 30 points. And look, this is a Jets team that they could go a month and a half and not score 30 points combined. Yet they managed to score 30 points in 2 quarters. I mean, this is crazy work for a Jets team that has struggled all year offensively. So give me 1 second. Whew. All right, I'm back. Whew. Okay, so now the question is it too little, too late for the Jets? I think it is. At 5-8, Aaron Rodgers is still mulling over the decision whether to come back on Christmas Eve versus the Commanders or not. At 5-8, I think it's a little, too late for the Jets. But I think this game was like a semblance of what they could have been this season. Like, it's just like a tease. Like, oh man, what could have been had Aaron Rodgers been healthy? But such is life. Good for Zach Wilson. It's been a rough go of it for him. Not just this year, but just over the life of his career. Some of it his own doing. I didn't think he should have been benched at all this year. They've had struggles offensively. He's been a part of that, but there's no better option on that bench. If they had gone out and gotten Joe Flacco, that's a different story. But to bench him in favor of Tim Boyle or Trevor Siemian, You got what you deserved. So this is more about the Texans for me. CJ Stroud, his health moving forward, and we'll see what happens with them. They're 7-6 though, and that's an ugly loss there. Rams Ravens was probably the best game of the day in Week 14 on Sunday. This was a fantastic contest. The Rams are playing the best football of their season. Unfortunately, this one didn't net them a victory, but not because of a lack of effort on their part. They were right there in lockstep with these Ravens in a wet, nasty game. Again, anything on the East Coast was going to be wet, windy, and nasty. And this game was no different. And I thought both teams handled the elements beautifully. Stafford played his ass off. You continue to see the importance of the second-year running back out of Notre Dame, Kyron Williams, who has just been fantastic for them since coming back. 25 carries, 114 yards against that Ravens defense. And he also caught the ball. Okay, he only had 3 catches in this game, but he is a weapon for them. And he's physical. He's smart. He does a great job running in between the tackles. And he runs with power. I think that's one of the underrated qualities of Kyron Williams is how physical he is at the point of contact. His biggest knock was his lack of home run speed. And that's why nobody really gave him the time of day in the draft. But obviously, Sean McVay saw something in him, made the pick, and he's been fantastic for them. Stafford, 23 of 41, 294, 3 touchdowns. The big thing here, no interceptions. The offensive line, I thought, did a really good job of giving him opportunities to throw the football. And I thought I saw prime Matthew Stafford. We're throwing from all kinds of angles and slots. We're throwing with timing and, rhythm and accuracy. And he's gaining trust in all of these receivers, Nakua and Kupp, obviously. But then now DeMarcus Robinson is being entered into the chat now. And now this young rookie tight end, Davis Allen, out of Clemson, is starting to emerge, and they went to him in this game, and he came up huge for them, his first career touchdown, and made some big catches in this game. And so all of a sudden now all of these, variety of weapons are stepping up. Stafford is starting to play well. They're gaining confidence. Defensively, it's a list of unknown guys, right? Like it's almost like the tomb of unknown soldiers. This is literally a patchwork defense. I could ask you right now, name 3 Rams defenders, not name Aaron Donald. You wouldn't be able to do it right now. I know you can't. I bet any amount of money you can't. If you're not a Rams fan, I know you can't. But they're finding ways to compete at a high level. And they had the Ravens on the ropes late in this ball game. And tell you what, man, Lamar Jackson is playing at a high level. I know statistically this is nowhere near his 2019 MVP season, but he's playing at a high level. Now, I will say, and the win probably had something to do with it, but there were a lot of underthrown balls in this game from him. And guys had to adjust. But boy, does he have a lot of weapons. For the first time in his career, he's got a lot of weapons, man. And they're finding ways to utilize them all. And then when he has to, he just whips out his legs, and you can't do a damn thing about it. And this thing gets to overtime. They let the Rams go down the field and get a field goal to tie the game up and send it to OT. And both teams have the ball, possess it to start overtime, don't score. And when the Rams have to punt, they kick it to Tylan Wallace, who was only in the game because Devin Duvernay suffered an injury, I think, in like the second quarter of the game. And he returns the punt for a touchdown. It's a spectacular return, spin move, breaks the ankle tackle, stays on his feet, clears the last defender, dives into the end zone. And for the second time this year, we've seen a walk-off punt return for a touchdown in overtime. We saw it week 1, Jets-Bills. We see it again here, week 14, Rams-Ravens. And the Ravens remain, as the only 10-win team now, or advanced to be the only 10-win team in the AFC and remain the number 1 seed in the AFC by virtue of their 10th victory of the season as they improved to 10-3 on the season. And also watch all the other teams that were right there with them lose. The next day they would watch the Dolphins lose. The Chiefs would lose later on that day. The Jags had already lost that afternoon. So all of the teams that were right there with them all took a step back. They take that step forward. And now they're all by their lonesome in first place in the AFC. And all they got to do is win. They control their own destiny. Or I hate when people say that. They control the outcome of their season. They're a good football team, are the Ravens. They're very balanced right now. Within their best defensive effort, and they lost their safety. Why am I blanking on his name? They lost their safety from Notre Dame in that game, but doesn't seem like it's as serious as I thought it was going to be when it happened. So that's great news because he's been like a Swiss Army knife for them, for the Ravens this season. But in any event, the Rams, yes, the Ravens being the number 1 seed, getting to 10 wins, the first team in the AFC to do so this year is a big story. I think the second biggest takeaway is that, hey, these Rams, holy shit, what the hell is going on? Like, they look like right now, if you put them against the Lions, I'm not sure they don't beat the Lions. They look like the 4th best team in the NFC right now, behind obviously San Francisco, Dallas, and Philadelphia. They look like the 4th best team in the conference right now. I get it. They're 6-7. They started off slow, but they didn't win this game. But holy shit. Look out for the Rams. Lions and Bears. Oh my. 28-13 victory for the Bears. They're now 5-8 on the season. And as I talked about, the Lions are sputtering. Now, they're 9-4. They're 1 game back of the best record in the NFC. So it's not like the sky is falling, but they've been as disappointing and unimpressive as one can be in their last 4 games, yet they've gone 2-2 in those games. They've found ways to win. But make no mistake about it, they're struggling. This team was 7-2, and we were talking about them best start of, in their, since the 1950s, I think it was the best start for them. Then they go and they lose on Thanksgiving. They're getting their asses waxed the week prior by the Bears and come back and win that game. They come out of Thanksgiving, they win. It's not pretty, but they get it done. And then they go and they lose this game. And I'd be lying to you if I said I was shocked. I'm not. But all of the things that they did early this season, they're not doing it right now. They were a disciplined team. They didn't beat themselves. They were smart. They made timely plays. They're just not doing those things. I'll give you a great example. It's 4th and 13. The Bears aren't snapping this football. Okay? They're not going for it on 4th and 13. Okay? Who are we kidding? They just want to see if they can get you to jump off sides, be undisciplined, which you shouldn't because it's 4th and 13. What are you racing for, right? Somehow, one of the Lions' dumb defensive linemen jump off sides. So they get a free play. They snap the ball, and Fields throws a dot to DJ Moore for a touchdown. And that was symbolic of the Lions the last month or so. They're just undisciplined. The defensive breakdowns all over the place. Guys are running wide open, and they're not making the plays. This was a nasty defensive unit early in the season. They were disciplined. They were tight. Their coverages the guys were flying around. Balls were tipped in the air. 2 Lions around to catch the pick. Like, they're just not doing that right now. They're not doing that. They jumped all over the Saints, allowed them to come back and had to fight them off late a week ago. They're just not the same team right now. But that said, again, the sky's not falling. Teams go through these little malaises in season. It's again, a war of attrition. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And you're going to have some of these, stretches where you got to navigate. I'd rather it happen now than in the playoffs, but they got to figure this shit out. Meanwhile, I think the biggest takeaway for me in this game is the fact that the Bears have won 2 out of their last 3, the Bears have won 3 out of their last 5, should have been 4 out of their last 5 if they would have taken care of the Lions the first time like they had them. And since Fields has come back, they're 3-2, should have been 4-1, and he's playing well. To the point now where either one of two things is happening. You're either really elevating his trade value, because my buddy asked me today, hey, if you trade Fields, what you getting for him? I'm like, I want my one back. This isn't Trey Lance. You're not trading away damaged goods. This isn't Zach Wilson where you're just trying to get something back for a guy that has proven he's probably not a credible NFL starter at this point. You're trading a guy with still very high upside who's continuing to get better. And if you put him in the right system, I think if you marry Justin Fields with Arthur Smith in Atlanta, for instance, oh my God, do you know how dangerous that offense would be with those playmakers and Justin Fields' legs in Arthur Smith offense? What? He's playing really well. So either you're elevating his trade value or you're putting yourself in a position for the second consecutive year in a row to net the number 1 overall pick and trade out of it because you believe in Justin Fields. You traded out of that pick last year because you wanted to give Fields an opportunity. And you may be in a similar spot this year where you go, hey, we believe in this kid. We're going to continue to build around him, and let's continue to have that trade be the gift that keeps on giving, right? So either way, the Bears are in a great position. It's a tough decision they've got to make. Do you go after one of these new quarterbacks that you think has a chance, or do you stick with Fields? He's making it tough. He's not making the decision easy. I thought it was going to be an easy, no-brainer decision. He's not making it easy. He's playing really well. I thought he was extraordinary in this game. Used his legs beautifully, and when he had to use his arm, I thought he used his arms really well. And I really think that he's playing at a high level right now for them, and it's giving them a chance. It's really giving them a chance, and I don't know. That's going to be one of the more intriguing off-season decisions that the Bears have to make with a GM that did not select Justin Fields. Keep that in mind. He's making it tough on them. They get the win 28-13. They're now 5-8. Lions drop to 9-4. Panthers and Saints. I only had one reason for watching this game. I had zero interest in this game other than the number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young. And Panthers fans have been all over this kid, and they're killing him. And I remember this is why I wanted to watch in particular, because I remember looking down at the ticker at the bottom of the screen as I was watching all of the other games that I was watching. That shit wasn't getting any time of the day on any of the TV screens that I was watching. So we had 6 games on at one. I had 5 games because I was at my parents' house. 6 would have been at my house, 5 at my parents' house because I had my laptop up. And of course, that wasn't one of the games. And I just remember watching one of the games and seeing the statistics at the bottom with the score, and it said Bryce Young 3 of 18 for like 30 something yards. And I went, wait, what? 3 of 18? Like, we don't do that in the NFL. Okay. We don't do 3 of 18 in the NFL. That's insane. Okay. So when I saw that, I was like, I gotta see what the hell's going on. Like, this is crazy. So I had to watch to see if it was as bad as the numbers. And he had a pick too at that time. I had to watch to see if the numbers were as bad as, I think it was 3 of 15 for like 23 yards and a pick or something like that. When I saw his numbers, I was like, whoa, that's scary. Gotta watch. And when I turned it on, what I saw was a mixture of drop passes, pressure that forced him to throw it away. So, you accumulate incompletions when you're, throwing to no one because you're under duress. And then he missed. Yeah, he missed. He was off all day. And that was probably the most disappointing part, was not the pressure. Look, they haven't given him a line that can give him any time. So that's not a surprise. It wasn't the drops. They don't have any talent. I'm not shocked. It sucks because it just furthers the narrative that this guy can't get it done. But then, look, when you have guys open, you can't miss. And again, open in college, in high school is different than open in the NFL. If a guy has a half a step, that's open in the NFL, and you got to put it on him. And he's constantly throwing behind guys. I don't think he's adjusted to the speed of the game yet. I think he's still adjusting to, another thing that's becoming alarming is a lot of what the Panthers are doing. They're in breaking routes. Like everything is over the middle of the field. I guess it's easier throws for him. No, he's never had the biggest arm, but everything is in breaking. And even with that said, he's still throwing behind guys. He's not throwing the ball to where they're going. He's throwing the ball where they're at, which is troublesome. But the biggest miss was right before the half. The Panthers forced a turnover of quarterback. And I told you, Derek Carr is such a bitch. I mean, he doesn't like it. He is contact averse. So anytime the threat of violence comes his way, he wants no part of it. And, I already am a staunch Derek Carr detractor because of his on-the-field antics. Like Mike Tomlin just said, hey, he needs his receiver, and I brought this up already, George Pickens, to tone down all of the theatrics on the field, showing up the quarterback. Like, yes, we know Mitchell, his mama named him Mitchell, I'm going to call him Mitchell. Mitchell Trubisky is trash. We know this already. We know you're open. Stop. You don't need to show up your quarterback. All right? Don't do that shit on the field. You want to be pissed off, slam your helmet off on the sideline, do that, right? Don't do that shit on the field. And Derek Carr's the same way. Guy runs a wrong route or there's miscommunication. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, but you can't be showing up your teammates like that. Not when your shit stinks. It's one thing if your shit don't stink. And even then, guys still want you to show them grace and mercy. And he's always pointing the blame at somebody, right? Anyway, I digress. He throws a bad pick before the half or fumbles, one or the other. They got to him, and somehow the camera wasn't even on him. They snapped the ball quick. Next thing I know, Panthers players down the field are pointing the other way, and the Panthers have the ball. And I don't even know what happened. I don't care. They turned it over, and Bryce Young has two cracks from about the 40-yard line, maybe the 35, at deep balls to Mingo, the second-round pick. And the first one, it was tight coverage, a better throw, and it's probably a catch. But the second one, Mingo somehow gets loose in the Saints secondary for a touchdown. He runs a deep post, and I don't know what happened to the defender. I don't know if there was a miscommunication in the secondary, but this man is open for a 37-yard touchdown. That's a backbreaker before half. You're dominating the game. It's 14-3. You got everything you want, and you missed the throw. That's a touchdown. It's 14-10. Now the game feels different. You're right back in this thing, and you can't miss that throw. And he didn't miss that throw at Alabama, which is why I'm like, he's struggling with confidence right now. You can tell. He did use his legs a little bit more in this game. That was good to see because he doesn't want to run, but he's going to have to. But at the end of the day, he was bad in this game. He was bad. This wasn't a 28-6 type of loss if he just plays better. He took some bad sacks. Again, the protection sucks. The guys aren't making plays for him. But he's got to make the plays that are there, and he's not doing that right now. The Saints blocked the punt in this game. That's what kind of pushed this thing out a bit. The Saints still stink. Like, this doesn't change the way I feel about them. If the Panthers were better equipped to take advantage of some opportunities, they might have won this game. I don't respect the Saints at all. They're 6-7. They're tied with the Bucs and the Falcons, but of the three teams, I have the least amount of faith in the Saints, which is crazy because I thought they were the best team in that division, top to bottom, before the season started. Their field goal kicker stinks too. And he's young, so you know how I feel about young kickers. I like to, again, show them grace and mercy. But boy, does he stink. He's been funky all year long. He missed like a 26-yard field goal. Like, you can't miss a 26-yard field goal, man. Anyway, I digress. They're 6-7. Panthers dropped to 1-12. Vikings and Raiders. Look, I don't have anything for you here. This is a 3-0 game. I'm just gonna say this. Somehow the Vikings are 7-6 and holding on to a wild card spot in the NFC right now. If the playoffs started today, they're your 6th seed. I don't know how they've done it with 3 different quarterbacks starting for them. They benched Josh Dobbs in this game. He was awful. Obviously, they only scored 3 points. They brought in Nick Mullins. He gave them a little shot in the arm, but not much. But when it was all said and done, he made the plays to drive them down the field, get them in the field goal range. Their kicker had already missed a kick. So this didn't have to be 0-0. Right before the half, he missed a kick that would have made it 3-0. The Raiders kicker, I think he missed a kick too. I don't know if he ever got a kick attempt. At the end of the day, this thing was 0-0 until 1:57 in the fourth quarter when Greg Joseph made a 36-yard field goal. Enough said. Raiders are 5-8. Vikings are 7-6. How you feeling about Antonio Pierce now? I can tell you this much. They playing defense. For anybody that felt like Aiden O'Connell could potentially do it, nah, I'm good on him. Seahawks, Niners. This game lost a lot of its luster when Geno Smith was ruled out pregame after working out and testing his body and deciding he couldn't go. But the Seahawks were game early. McCaffrey bust off a 73-yard run on the first play of the game. They scored a touchdown a play or two later. But then the Seahawks ran off 10 unanswered. Drew Lock was out here slinging that thing and running around with his legs. And I'm like, oh, shit, look at Drew. It was short-lived. And then the 49ers just consistently went through the motions and went about their business, scored a touchdown in every single quarter, which tallies 28 points. And the Seahawks made a couple of mistakes late that were the difference. Lock, again, he's Drew Lock, so even with the good, you're going to take some bad. He threw 2 picks in this game, but he was actually not bad in this game, was Drew Lock. Thought he did some really solid things. But when it's all said and done, the 49ers, just too good defensively and offensively. Brock Purdy continues to be really good. And the beauty of what he did in this game in particular, he got some shots down the field and he did not miss. And I don't know if I've seen an NFL season where open receivers down the field have been missed more. And to me, I've always said what separates the elite from the good from the mediocre, mediocre from the below average is the ability to consistently hit open receivers, and the elite consistently hit the deep shot. And that's whether a guy has 1 step or 5 yards of separation down the field. You just can't miss because those opportunities are so infrequent in the NFL. And Purdy, he's been hitting them shits all year long, and he hit one beautifully down the field to Deebo Samuel in this game. And 368 yards, a career high for Brock Purdy, 2 more touchdown passes as the 49ers improved to 10-3 on the season with the 28-16 win. Seattle drops to 6-7. They're in the midst of a 4-game slide. This was a 6-3 team, I believe 6-3 at one point this season. And the struggles continue for them. And it doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any easier. Monday Night Football at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. See if they can't snap out of their funk. Bills Chiefs was a fun game to watch. Me and Boss were on the opposite sides of this. So this was the game that we picked during the day to be at odds about. He had Kansas City. And I think a lot of his Buffalo hate was that they got Buffalo on the schedule next. So he's psyching himself up that Buffalo is trash and that he doesn't trust Josh Allen, which is that's fair that you don't trust Josh Allen. I do. You know how I feel about Josh Allen. But I think he's trying to psych himself up that they're going to go to Buffalo and not just win, but dominate them. And it's not happening. And I already told him Buffalo is a desperate team. I don't know if you saw the reaction by Sean McDermott when that final Patrick Mahomes pass went incomplete and fell harmlessly to the ground. You would have thought that was the pass that was going to send them to the Super Bowl, that they had just beaten the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. He dropped down to his hands on his knees, and he dropped his head, and then he lifted up, and there was this big, cheesy grin on his face, and you could see the weight of the world just coming off of his shoulders. Like, there was a lot that he went through that last week with the statements he made, comparing, the 9/11 terrorists and the synchronicity and the efficiency with which they worked and all that shit. And it was just a bad look for him. And then, obviously it's been a tumultuous season with the losses and then firing your offensive coordinator. There's a lot going on in Buffalo, and his job has been called into question. And this was one he needed to have. And their season's on the line. And he said it before the game. We're playing playoff football right now. Those are always the most dangerous teams. The teams that a month before the playoffs start are playing playoff football because their season's on the line. Those are the teams you don't want any part of this time of the year because the desperation level is at a high for them. It's at a different level. You can't even, like, you're sitting there on your high horse at 10-3, feeling good. These boys are fighting at 7-6. They can't afford another loss. You can afford a loss. You'll be good. You're still making the playoffs. They're not. And the Chiefs, like, at 8-4 coming into this game, the Chiefs could afford a loss. They're making it to the playoffs. The Bills, on the other hand, you know, they can't afford another one of those losses like they had against Philadelphia where they play really well, but the scoreboard suggests otherwise, right? Because that's all that matters. And they jumped on the Chiefs 14-0, and I thought they were going to run those boys. But in typical Bills fashion, they squandered the lead, and it looked like they were going to lose this game. And obviously, we all know about the play to Travis Kelce. Then he laterals back to Kadarius Toney, and the officials make the right call, which is crazy that we're even having this conversation about the call, because at the end of the day, he was offsides. And, you know, what was crazy was Dan Orlovsky did a little cut-up of Kadarius Toney throughout the game. And he was offsides just like that at least 5 or 6 times during the game. It was ridiculous. Like, it was crazy because somebody, you know, people always send Bleacher Report like different angles of stuff. Like, you're at the game and you're using your camera or whatever on your phone. And somebody was literally right down the line, like giving you the official's vantage point. And it was funny because the head official that did that game, I'm blanking on his name, but he told the media after the game that the official couldn't even see the ball because Kadarius Toney was obstructing their view from the ball. He was so offsides. And that person that had the camera, you know, angled at the play literally showed you Kadarius Toney lined up offsides, and you couldn't even see the football. He was so far offsides. So, and that was how he was lining up all game long. So he was just flagrant with it all game long. So the Chiefs have no reason to be upset. Mahomes even apologized for his antics after the game. He was just pissed off because they lost, right? We heard the audio of him bitching to Josh Allen. Allen's like, bro, I don't give a shit. I'm trying to win games. I ain't trying to hit what the hell you talking about. I'm over here struggling trying to get to the playoffs. You can miss me with that shit for real. So, big win for the Bills. It was not pretty, and they've got to find a way to close out games better than this. They would have lost. And I've talked about this. When they fired Ken Dorsey, I talked about the failures of this Bills defense in clutch moments to get it done. And it would have happened again if Kadarius Toney doesn't step off sides, isn't offsides, lined up offsides. It would have happened again. Now, there was a lot of time left, and we would have seen what would have happened. Bills would have got the football. I trust Josh Allen in those moments, but and he missed a wide open Gabe Davis. They should have scored a touchdown. Gabe Davis is streaking down the seam for a touchdown, and somehow he doesn't see him, and he tries to force it up the sidelines, and it's incomplete. And I'm just like, and Gabe Davis was pissed, as he should have been. Allen can't miss that, but they prevailed. They got it done. And it was good to see Von Miller with the game on the line actually get pressure, which is something that the Bills have missed all season, and they still struggle to get to the quarterback. They're going to need, and now he's dealing with some off the field issues, and if anything happens with that, he could be suspended at moment's notice. So they better hope that gets pushed off until the offseason, because they don't really have any guys that can get to the quarterback. He's the only one. So we'll see. Big win for them. They're 7-6, and they really can't afford to lose a game right now. They're still on the outside looking in. Big one against Dallas coming up. I expect them to win that game, just like I expected them to beat the Chiefs. You know what's crazy? We're about to talk about the Denver Broncos here in a second. A lot of people don't realize this. The Denver Broncos are 1 game out of first place in the AFC West. When have we been through 14 weeks of football And anybody not named the Los Angeles Chargers have been remotely close to the Chiefs in the division. I can't tell you the last time the Chiefs have been this far back in the standings for the number 1 seed overall. They're not going to be the number 1 seed this year. And number 2, they've been this close to the next closest team in the division. Normally around this time, they're getting ready to lock up the division. Now they're fighting for their lives in that division. They're 8-5, and now we go to the next game, the final game of Slate Skatin this week, and the Broncos and Chargers. And the Broncos are 7-6. The Chiefs are 8-5. A lot of people don't realize that they're 1 game back, and they beat the Chiefs this year. So it's not like they got this 2-game cushion, even though they're only 1 game up. They own the tiebreaker. The Broncos beat these boys already. And if the Broncos take care of business in the division, and they just beat the Chargers in this game 24-7 to improve to 7-6, and this offense is still maddening in Denver. But boys, this defense good. And they beat up Justin Herbert, knocked him out of the game. And when they don't turn it over, which they did turn it over very early in this game, I may add, but they got stops on 4th downs in this game, and that's pretty much what the difference was. I tell you this all the time. If you want to know why a game ends up the way it does, a lot of times you can go to turnovers and red zone efficiency. The Chargers had 2 turnovers. The Broncos had 1. And the Broncos, during this resurgence, have won the turnover battle on a weekly basis. And usually it's not close. Usually they're forcing 3 and 4 and 5 turnovers and not turning it over, or turning it over only once. And then when you go to the red zone, they were 2 of 4 in the red zone. The Chargers were 1 of 2. And then you take it a step further, 4th down efficiency. The Chargers went for it on 4th down 6 times. They were 1 of 6 in the game, and that's where the game was won by the Broncos and lost by the Chargers. As I mentioned, they knocked Justin Herbert out of this game, and his season's done. He's going to have season-ending surgery on his finger, and the Broncos just continue to find ways to win. It's not pretty. Aesthetically, it's not pleasing to the eyes, but when you watch this team, they have already forged an identity. They know who they are. We play solid football offensively. We don't turn, like Russell Wilson is the definition of a game manager right now. Don't turn the shit over. All right. Use your legs when necessary, but just for the most part, if we got to punt, we'll punt. And every possession in a kick. If we do that, we'll be just fine, because this defense is not giving up much. And we know we can count on them to force 2 to 3 turnovers every week. And if we don't turn it over, we're going to have favorable field position. And then every so often, just throw up a moon ball to Cortland Sutton, and he'll come down with it. Did you see the one-handed grab he had for the touchdown that put this game pretty much out of reach? Are you kidding me? And when I brought him up, when I compared him to Terry McLaurin and asked, would you take him over Terry? Some people told me that was disrespectful to Terry. Yeah, right. Cortland Sutton is him. You guys are tripping. Anyway, Broncos are now 7-6, and don't look now. They're 1 game out of first place in the AFC West. And the Chargers, let's see, they have beaten the Chiefs rather have beaten the Chargers already this year. They have them in the final game of the season. They beat the Raiders already. They have the Raiders again coming up, and they split with the Broncos. So right now, the Chiefs are 3-1 in the division. The Broncos, meanwhile, they're trailing because they lost to the Raiders in week 1. Or did they? I think they did lose to the Raiders in week 1 at home, 17-16. And then they also have lost to the Chiefs. So that's 2 losses right there. We don't need to go any further than that. But they're right there. They don't have a better division record, but they're right there with a lot of football left to be played. Enough, I'll say, not a lot. Anyway, that's just Slate Skatin for week number 14. And man, no more bye weeks. I'm a little sad because now we're playing Saturday games. You know what that means. We're coming to the end of this thing. To the end of the road. I don't want to let go, though. Not ready to let go of the NFL season, but whether I like it or not, it's coming to that end. So let's get to garbage time. I'm going to finish this thing up as I forge forward despite this cold trying to kick my ass. Give me 1 second. I won't let it get me. All right, so let's get to the comment section before we get out of here. Juan Gotti talking sports. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, "Sup, Lou? A lot of Washington fans want Harbaugh. How do you feel?" I'm good on Harbaugh. I don't want any parts of John Harbaugh or Jim, excuse me. Let him go to the Chargers. He likes being out on the West Coast. Go to the Chargers. I'm good. Go to the Patriots. They're used to that kind of, tough, hard-nosed, what was I had a phrase in my head. But they're used to that shit. Somebody cracking the whip, and he's proven that he can win everywhere he's been. He hasn't won a Super Bowl though. But I'm not looking to get a guy for 4 or 5 years and then his way of coaching wears on people in the organization and they got to move on, because this ain't college. He's a college coach, because the way he coaches and how he demands and how he goes about his business, it's good for the college game, but you're turning over that roster every 2-3 years. You're getting new players in there. The portal exists now. Guys don't like it, they can leave. The NFL is different. You got a core base of guys, and winning cures all. If you're winning, guys are going to keep quiet and go about it. But trust me, nobody wants to play for a slave driver, which is what Jim Harbaugh is, and it wears on you. And we've heard guys say this. I'm good on that. Let him go somewhere else. I don't want any parts of him. And again, I'm not looking for the 4 or 5 year rental. I want a coach that we can have for the next decade. I'm trying to have one of these Mike Tomlin type dudes where we just don't worry about our coaching situation. I want to be like the Ravens and John Harbaugh. Like, I don't want to have to worry about my coach, for the next decade plus. That's what I'm trying to find. Harbaugh, I've already likened him to Larry Brown. I know a lot of you are too young to know who Larry Brown is as an NBA or just a basketball coach in general. But Larry Brown, one of the most talented coaches to ever coach basketball, and it doesn't matter where. Whether it was Kansas and his runs in the late 80s with Danny Manning and company, or the NBA, whether it was with Reggie Miller and the Pacers, or it was with the 76ers with AI and company. He won everywhere he went, but he never lasted anywhere more than 3 or 4 years because his style of coaching wears on people. And he never won big in the NBA. He always got close, but he never won. That's Jim Harbaugh. I'm good. I'll pass. One guy talking sports. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Week 18, Miami versus Bills for the East. Give me Buffalo. Now that one will be in Miami, but I don't care. If it comes down to that, give me Buffalo as well. I've already said I expect Buffalo to come back, make a run, and I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up in the AFC Championship game. I have that much confidence in Buffalo. I think this is the year. Like, with no Mahomes, I say no Mahomes like he doesn't exist, like he's out for the season like Burrow, but I just don't see the Chiefs whipping into shape. People are just like, yeah, it's the Chiefs, and not this year. I'm telling you, not this year. They needed to do what I said they needed to do at the trade deadline. Let's go get a receiver. They didn't. Rashid Rice will be good next year, but right now they need Rashid Rice to be Juju Smith-Schuster this year, and he's not ready to do that. Next year he'll be ready to be that kind of receiver for them, but they need it now, and they don't have it now, so they're in trouble. And with no Burrow, and with the AFC just being wide open in nature, it's just Lamar Jackson, really. Nobody's afraid of the Jags. Nobody's afraid of any of the other teams, the Dolphins. Nobody's afraid of the Dolphins. Like, it's just Lamar and the Ravens. If you're the Bills, this is your opportunity. Seize it. I think they're going to do it. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Reedy Davis writes, Lou, if we get up to 2 or 3, think we should trade back and hopefully get an extra 2 and get Marvin 3 and tackle in the second round. If we get up to 2 or 3, all options have to be available and on the table for Washington. That includes staying there making a pick that's not a quarterback, staying there, making a pick that is a quarterback, trading out, allowing somebody to come up and get a quarterback. All of those things have to be on the menu, right? Now you got to decide which one you want to roll with, but all of those things should be on the menu. How far back are you trading? Obviously, always one of my questions, but you got to be comfortable with wherever you're moving back with the players that are going to be available to you. I've heard over and over again, this is a deep tackle draft. So is the question that you have to ask yourself, and I haven't done the work, so I can't answer this. Is there a clear and obvious delineation between the top 2 tackles and the rest of the tackle class? If that answer is yes, and you feel like there's a clear drop-off between those two and the rest of the draft class, then and that's what you want the most, then you can't move out of that spot, right? I know the picks are enticing. If you think that the gap is negligible, then you make the trade. There's nothing to talk about because you feel like not only am I getting more picks this year, but also next year. And so, again, for a roster that we think is broken and needs a lot of work, you want to accumulate as much draft capital in the future and now as you can, because, again, that allows you flexibility. That's the thing you want the most of, is flexibility. So, again, there's a lot of options if we get up to 2 or 3, and we'll see what happens, especially if you get to 2. Because now you're guaranteed to have an opportunity to get the second best quarterback in the draft, or what some might deem the best quarterback in the draft. And you'll have an opportunity to either select that guy yourself or trade out of that pick and allow somebody else to come up and get it. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, what's your top 3 coach list for us? I don't really have a list right now. I haven't gotten to that point yet where I'm compiling lists. I told you I'm kind of stuck on the GM thing. I'll have a GM list before I have a coach list, because it's not like we'll be just looking for a coach this offseason. If that were the case, then I would be more fixated on the coaching situation. The GM is the most important thing. We'll see if they do the team president thing on the football side of the operation, or if they, come up with some sort of title for someone on the football side that's above the GM. But the GM is going to be the most important hire this offseason, not the coach, to me at least. But we'll see, because that GM is going to then, in fact, pick the head coach, if you get what I'm saying. So, again, not to belabor the point, because I've said that a million times, but that's how I feel. So I'm more fixated on the GM situation. Juan Gotti talking sports. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Juan Gotti writes, hey, double up. I think that's actually a triple up for you, but we double up again. It doesn't matter. We might get blessed with 2 NFC South teams. Ew. That's nasty. I don't think we will. I've said this already. I think you're getting 1 NFC South team in the playoffs, and that's it. I still think, despite the loss to the Giants, I still think the Packers and the Rams are the 2 division-winning teams outside of Dallas and Philadelphia. Whoever doesn't win the East, they're the 2 best teams remaining in the NFC right now that that are outside of the top 5. And when it's all said and done, the dust settles, smoke clears, I think those 2 will separate themselves and end up being your 6th and 7th seed. And I think you might have said that like 2 weeks ago. I think you might have picked those 2 teams out, and I was like, the Rams? I don't, or it might have been the Packers. I might have questioned your Packers after that Sunday night game against the Chiefs. I think you said them and the Rams, and I felt like the Rams were coming on strong. But I wasn't sure about the Packers. I think the Packers are going to end up doing it. We'll see. I don't think the consistency just isn't there from those NFC South teams. It just isn't. We're going to get 1 team over 500 at 9-8, and the rest of that division is going to be 8-9 or fewer wins. Atomic Ant, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Washington just released Danny Johnson. That's a bit surprising this late in the season. Didn't see that coming. If that is in fact true, it doesn't really do anything, doesn't move the needle. I just always assumed he'd be on this roster. And remember, they signed him to a 2-year, $7 million deal, I believe, in the offseason. So I just didn't see the rush, the haste to get rid of him. And I just thought he'd be a guy that would roll until camp next year. I didn't think he would make it with the next regime, though. Danny Johnson has always been a guy similar to like DeShazer Everett, who was just a guy that was around that the coaching staff just loved. But, you know, the next group comes in and they wouldn't have as much stock in, you know, him. And so I didn't think he would make it past the next regime, but I thought he'd make it out of this season. That's kind of surprising to me, if that's true. Barrett Downing, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Barrett Downing writes, if we get up to 2 or 3, I only want to trade back to 6, no further. I don't want to go back very far either, and I don't think you will. It will be interesting, though, because there'll be teams like Atlanta, like the Raiders, who the Raiders are going to win another game or two. My buddy was like, yo, I need a quarterback. I'm trying to lose out. And I'm like, bro, you're going to beat the Chargers on Thursday. Like, I'm like, you're going to win tomorrow, bro. Like, I don't know what you want this to be, but you're winning tomorrow against Easton Stick, buddy. Like, you're going to win 6 or 7 games this season. You're not going to be anywhere near the top 5. So, and I'm seeing all these mock drafts with Jaden Daniels dropping to the teens. You're right. What the hell do you think this is? If this kid is as good as people say he is, he just won the Heisman Trophy. If this continues through the draft process, he's a top 10 pick. He might even go top 5. There might be 3 quarterbacks that go in the top 5. Who are we kidding? Stop. We do this with quarterbacks every year. So if you're serious about getting one of these 3 quarterbacks, Drake May, Caleb Williams, or Jaden Daniels, you're probably going to have to enter the top 10, and probably more likely than not, you're going to have to enter the top 5. If not 5, 7. Okay? We do this all the time. We did it with Tua and Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Oh, you know, we don't love these guys, and they all went top 7. Okay? We did it with Fields and Wilson and Lawrence and Lance, and 3 of those dudes went 1, 2, 3. Right? Like, understand how this works. We push quarterbacks up, not back. So at the end of the day, if you want one of these boys, you're going to have to come up. And like, the Patriots are going to be in the mix. The Bears have a decision to make. Arizona's going to roll with Kyler Murray, so they're not interested in a quarterback right now. But there are going to be a number of other teams that may be interested, like Washington, for instance, like the Raiders, like potentially the Atlanta Falcons. And so there are going to be some options, but the Falcons are way back. The Raiders are going to be way back, right? The Giants may be interested in a quarterback. They're going to be way back because they're winning games now all of a sudden. So these are teams that need quarterbacks, but they're not going to be in the top 5. They're not going to be in the top 7. They're going to be closer to 10 to 12 in that range. How far are you willing to go back? You said 6. Is the 6th team in the draft going to need a quarterback? Is the question you have to ask yourself. Or are they just not good? I don't know. We'll find out. Because the Titans might end up being the 6th team in the draft. They're not looking for a quarterback right now. They like what they've seen out of Will Levis. So, in the teams that are around us, 2 of those first 5 picks are going to belong to the Bears potentially. Who knows? We'll see what happens with the Bears. Obviously, they're 5-8 right now. They might end up with 7 wins for all we know. But as they continue to win, remember, our 2nd round pick gets worse and worse. A lot of you wanted to jump in front of them in the 1st round. I'm like, hey, okay, that's cool, but let's not get carried away now. I want 3 in the top 40. They're trending towards that pick being like 43 or 44. Anyway, I digress. Ayub Matan, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Ayub Matan writes, y'all might be bad, Lou, but man, at least your fan base isn't delusional. Got fans thinking DeVito is the franchise QB, man. It's nasty right now. I've said this already. I told Giants fans not to get carried away, and I knew it was going to happen. I said, please don't get carried away with this. It's fun, it's cute, and you know, all of this is excellent, and I'm enjoying it. It's a fun ride, but that's what it is. Now, look, I don't mind. I would love it if the Giants, because remember, Eli Manning was already trying to convince ownership in the front office to hold on to Daniel Jones. Well, they're not getting rid of him, but to give him another shot. I'm cool with that. And if DeVito's emergence gives them confidence that, hey, we got something here between the two of those quarterbacks, great. I love it. But I think they understand what Tommy DeVito is right now, at least. I mean, and that's not to say he can't get better, because we've watched him grow up a little bit, but nobody is sitting here saying, hey, man, they might have themselves one. But again, we'll see. Not my problem. But hey, y'all 1 game out of the playoffs, so, and you play 2 out of the 3 teams that are vying for a spot. Y'all play the Saints, y'all play the Rams, right? So, hey, y'all got a shot to make some noise. We'll see what happens. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, if Tommy DeVito somehow sneaks y'all into the playoffs, bro, y'all not getting a quarterback. 1, you're too far away at that point. 2, man took you to the playoffs when your season was dead. Like, we'll see. Y'all not going to the playoffs, man. Who are we kidding? So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on the 379th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. If you are a member of the LTN exclusives, we'll be live later on tonight. I might move that show up to 8:30, depending on how the rest of my evening goes. It will be no later than 8:45, though. And then that will allow me to get in, get out, and get to my Washington Commanders show, Commanders Nightly News Live, later on that evening at 9:45. So very active day here on the Louie T Network to make up for some of the inactivity of yesterday. Looking forward to doing that and chopping it up with you guys. A lot of interesting things to talk about on both of those programs. So if you got a little bit of time, you ain't doing shit, come look your man up, man. I look forward to chopping it up with y'all. But until then, y'all know what it is. Y'all take care. God bless and good night.